Father, 60, left my mother, 65, for prostitute, 55, and is now trying to take everything from us. First of all, before anybody continues reading, trigger alert. This story contains scenes of overt violence and mental abuse. This story begins in May of 2023, even though I had a lot of misfortunes the prior 3 years. Which, as we'll later find out, was entirely my father's doing, since he hated me long before I knew it. One day in May of last year, out of the blue, and just days after Mom actually asked him whether he had an affair, which he denied, my father announced that he fell in love with another woman. My mom was shocked and hurt, and my father was at first acting courteous and nice towards her. It's important to know that my father suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. Rather, he has NPD, but everybody else in his proximity is the one suffering due to it. For the longest time my mom wasn't aware of the ramifications of this, but I've had to deal with a narcissist before, so this isn't my first rodeo. Soon it became clear to us why he was being nice. He actually fears a divorce, which would be the death knell to his business. It was therefore no surprise to me when his demeanor changed after the first week, and he soon suggested that Mom should stay married to him and remember the good times and what we built together. After that failed to impress Mom, the threats started coming in. One day I was working from my home office when Mom came rushing in, crying. She told me my father had just told her if they get a divorce he'll lock her inside the house and burn it down with her in it. When I confronted him about it, he immediately denied it, then, typical of NPD, slowly admitted it while also trying to rationalize his cruel behavior. When I tried to speak with him again a day later, he threatened me with a loaded crossbow. His insanity went on for an entire summer, and I genuinely feared for Mom's life. One weekend in September then I took her on a weekend trip to see my brother and relax herself a little. During the trip, my father's girlfriend's pimp contacted us. At that point in time we didn't know he was a pimp, we thought he was merely a concerned ex. He spent 30 minutes on the phone with Mom and told us a wild story about how my father essentially kidnapped his girlfriend and took her east to introduce her to his family despite her vehement pleas not to. We kind of bought into the story because it fit my father's obsessive and uncaring nature. Later on we found out this was just a way to test our reaction and punishing us for believing it. When we returned on Monday, somewhat carefree, Mom found her suitcase and a letter on the porch. The letter accused Mom of being manipulative and trying to ruin his new relationship and told her to accept reality. At the door I realized that he had not only changed the locks but boarded himself in like a complete lunatic. I called the police, but, unfortunately, the cop that arrived was one of my father's friends, and he outright mocked us and likewise told us to accept reality. That cop has since been relocated to another precinct. I at least managed that much, after much pressure. He suggested that Mom move into my place for the time being, but my father was adamant that she move into my father's and his girlfriend's former love nest. We decided then and there that she'd live with me for a while, but nonetheless our curiosity made us check the place him and his girlfriend had cohabited for the past year or two. The place was unspectacular but quite dirty. All their clothes were still strewn along, documents were planted on the table, chairs and even the floor. The bed was soiled. It was disgusting, so we left and Mom settled in with me. Fast forward 2 days and all of a sudden one of my father's friends who had recently moved to Kiel phoned us. He was quite angry and kept insisting that my mom and I stole the key to his shop that he had entrusted to my father, and that my father was also missing a loan agreement my father had made with his new girlfriend. He loaned her €3,000 for vehicle repairs. For a car that is now mainly operated by the ex-boyfriend. We eventually calmed him down while also confronting him in regards to whatever he may have known about my father's affair. As it turns out, that poor sob didn't know the name of my father's new love, and if he had known it, he for sure would have broken down. The same woman my father is dating turns out to have dated that guy just months prior to meeting my father. They were a couple for 2 years, even though he himself is married, and everybody in town assumed his secret girlfriend was still with her original boyfriend. The same way she treated him, she's treating my father now in front of her friends. She regularly denies being with him and seems ashamed of him. She only ended it with him after he eventually manned up and put his wife on the title of the house. Later that day I spoke to a friendly gas station attendant who, as it turned out, not only knows my mom and me well but also knows my father's girlfriend and the guy she dated before my father. As it turns out, that woman is well known in town and has been dating many married men throughout the years. And the ex, it turns out, isn't her ex-boyfriend but her pimp. I confronted my father with this information but he just called me names and claimed I was dumb and that his relationship to her is totally different from all the prior ones. That marked the last time I even tried to use reason with him. 6 weeks after he had forcibly removed Mom from her own home, with a suitcase that only contained shoes, a towel and a singular nightgown, a judge was finally hearing the case and ruled that my father has to immediately restore my mother to the house. Which he did, after much pressure, 9 days later. Shortly before Christmas I started a new job and, despite all the pressure and hurt at home, managed myself rather well. Mom was really proud and even though it was a sad Christmas, we tried to make the best of it and forget the fact that my father is celebrating it with somebody else, at our house that we built together. New Year's Eve I invited Mom for dinner. The evening was joyous and for a brief moment we forgot about our family drama. Unfortunately, this was not to last. Eager to have us permanently removed from the premises as quickly as possible, my father saw his chance and called the police moments before we even got home. This backfired, however, the moment I approached the officer with a receipt from the Chinese restaurant we were dining at, proving that we couldn't have terrorized my father, as he himself put it, since we weren't even home. After the cops diffused the situation we had a whooping 2 months of semi-peace before my father's next insane episode. One day Mom would come home from work and settle in the one small room the judge had afforded her in the prior ruling, just like she had done every day since she was allowed access to the house again. This time, however, my father hurried down the staircase, shoved her into the living room and locked the door while his girlfriend walked down the stairs as if she owns the place. The moment my father opened the door again, Mom rushed out of there fearing his madness and in the process he struck her back with his fist. She screamed in agony, fled onto the street and screamed for help. My father, being ever the psychotic narcissist, took to the balcony and screamed help. Help. As if to mock her or even act the victim himself. His girlfriend just stood there and applauded like a massive sociopath. I immediately called the police and as we waited outside together, my father would stand on the other side of the road and mock us, laughing and telling us that police won't come because he called them before, the one time he was actually wrong. They did come. He then went on a massive tantrum and accused my mother of allegedly lying about her education, she's a mechanical engineer, and how she'll never get a favorable divorce because she lied to me for 30 years. When the police arrived, they were rather mad. 2 younger lads who really didn't want to be there and were just 30 minutes away from the end of their shift before I had called. They got really mad when I asked them to interview my father's girlfriend and my father just stood there and denied it all, claiming she had left already or that I was imagining things. The more hot-headed cop told my father that either he stops playing games or things will get uncomfortable. Caught in a lie yet again, my father eventually led them down the stairs into the basement but stopped them halfway, saying he had to prepare something. They talked for a good 20 minutes and I don't know what happened but when the cops re-emerged, they seemed more antagonistic towards my mother and me than towards my father. Months later we did find out that his girlfriend was down in the basement, drunk like a skunk and that the cops tried interviewing her. There were 2 more instances before my mom lost the next hearing my father had initiated. The judge was honestly disgusting. No empathy, no decency, and was forced to move out and into her own new home. The first instance happened on February 15, 2024 at 2:20 a.m. We actually installed a security camera in my mother's bedroom. My father called it an invasion of his privacy but I considered it necessary for my mother's safety. Sure enough, we also caught him sneaking into Mom's room multiple times after installing the camera, so I have it all on film. My mother was sound asleep when all of a sudden my father's girlfriend knocked on her door and woke her up, saying your husband is laying on the floor and puking his guts out. My mother got out of bed, woke me up, and we talked to that woman together, with her frantically explaining to us that she cannot stand seeing anybody puke and that she just wants to leave and that he's our problem now. She vowed not to return and that it was over and he was an asshole anyways, the usual lies. His girlfriend left and Mom went into the basement where she found my father. Not much caring for him anymore, she took photos of the disgusting place he had turned his former office into and told him to puke it all out, before leaving him to his misery. Early in the afternoon on the very same day, his girlfriend was back with him. The second instance happened just weeks before the hearing, again. That judge should be removed from the bench. The way he approached my mother and told her he doesn't much care to hear about domestic violence. NVM that this is a judge who gives interviews to the local South Korean newspaper, presenting himself as a champion of women's rights and declaring that no abuser should be allowed to stay in the house, regardless of property rights. Shortly after 10 p.m. my father and his girlfriend started partying loudly. Unlike these two, my mother still works a job and has to get up early, so she went into the living room and asked them to please tune it down a little. My father's response was to get in my mom's face, scream "you know what, you stupid so," and then strike her. I woke up half an hour later, heard my mom crying outside, asked her what had happened and called the police. Police showed up, took a breathalyzer test. He wasn't drunk, and apparently that makes it less worse for German police. They told me if he had been drunk, they would have arrested him that night, and questioned him. He claimed he'd never lay hands on Mom, nor ever scream obscenities at her. I proved that a lie by playing back the video. Police said they couldn't see much from the angle of the camera, even though you can clearly hear him scream obscenities and you can clearly hear the smacking sound. The female cop at least comforted my mom. Then everybody went home. The next day my father cut the wires of the doorbell and disconnected the phone line. I won't say much about the court hearing other than what I've already alluded to. It was goddamn awful, and, in my righteous rage, I took to Google reviews. When the court saw that, they threatened Mom's lawyer and told her that if I don't take down the Google review, the judge will press charges against me. I took it down, even though it was factual and not the least bit slanderous. I did call him a misogynist for equating Mom to property. Mom moved out on July 31st and my father and his new family had a big party on August 1st. Since then I know that the plan is to have me removed from my home. My father is, unfortunately, also my landlord, then move his girlfriend's son into my place, his girlfriend's sister into Mom's old room, and, eventually, the pimp will move into a new apartment my father is currently building in his former office/basement, a fact he's keeping a secret from German IRS, since he keeps receiving tax cuts for an office that doesn't even exist anymore. My hearing was on August 23rd and I just received the ruling yesterday. The hearing itself was an insane clown show overshadowed by my father's lawyer's initial actions. 5 minutes into the hearing, his lawyer suddenly held up a printout with photoshopped corpse photos, an obituary and a Facebook in memoriam, then he shouted, "You're already dead." That same day I filed charges against the lawyer, and the Bar Association just emailed me for more information an hour ago. The interesting part is that this isn't the first time I hear about this fake Facebook profile with my name and pics. I first found out about it shortly after a car accident in Mexico back in 2021, when a doctor presented me with it on his phone and told me that my face was all over local newspapers. For the past 3 years I had assumed this was an insane stalker who did this. I just never would have guessed that the insane stalker is my own father. Suffice to say, I lost the court case, despite earlier assuming I had won, given the judge's reaction and gleeful demeanor towards me, and it appears to me the judge didn't even listen or was fooled by my father's lies. I actually just reported him to German IRS aka Finanzamt, after I read a charge claiming I hadn't paid him any rent in 2 years. If he claims that in court, chances are he never paid any taxes on the rent he received. My father now has the legal right to have me removed from my home, that I helped to build and paid for diligently. I plan to fight the ruling, but my lawyer doesn't give me much hope that either my legal expense insurance or public legal aid will be willing to cover it. I need to save some money while I find a new job, and I promised somebody I'd travel and see them for Halloween abroad, so I can't just splurge all my savings. I'm hoping for a miracle, as naive as that sounds. In closing, I'd like to apologize for the very liberal use of air quotes. I consider it necessary, given all the pretense surrounding my father's new acquaintances. I'm ashamed of being my father's son, to the point I normally air quote even the words father and man whenever I mention him to anybody. I'm not sad about having lost a father, because he never was a real father to me. I'm more sad that my mom has to go through this and that my father manages to destroy all my hopes and dreams. Now I'm unemployed again and barely able to work on my Kickstarter-funded game I've been meaning to release for months now. In just 3 days there's an adventure game jam where I wanted to present a smaller game written in my new point-and-click adventure engine, but instead of being able to focus on that and on finding a new job, or seeking self-employment outright, I'm forced to deal with my father's cruelty and malice. Everyone, I spend time and effort these videos, and I would like very much if you like, comment and subscribe to help the channel grow. Small update. After half a week of relative peace, the court ruling notwithstanding, he bombarded Mom with WhatsApp messages all morning, accusing her of stealing packages off his porch and claiming that both her and I were spotted, and that lest we return his merch within 30 minutes, he'll file another police report. Eventually I took Mom's phone, typed "do it," and blocked him. Mom hasn't been back to the house since the day she had to move out, since it hurts her so much to be in its proximity, and I haven't taken anything from him, so safe to say it's just another bad bluff. Yesterday I went to the police station and inquired about recent reports filed against Mum and me by the pimp and my father's girlfriend. The cops are just annoyed at this point and won't waste any more time with those reports. They sent an email to both of them asking for more details, because the claims presented by those two were not even consistent and sounded like things written by drunk people. Never got a response, so they're forwarding it to the state attorney. The state attorney is likewise annoyed and knows all of this is about a family feud, so there will not be any charges in all likeliness. I'm with Mom right now because, after I returned from grocery shopping and was looking for my keys, my father's girlfriend saw my flashlight outside, screamed that I'm harassing them, and 5 seconds later my father went outside and yelled "Zits and dine at Senazoo Fest. Literally, are your teeth too tight?" So basically suggesting that he'll punch me hard enough I'd lose a few teeth. After I asked him to repeat that and walked towards him, he slammed the door in my face. He's a coward who will only ever hit a man from behind or assault a small woman. Mom just found out that her own insurance forwarded her new address to my father, despite her explicitly asking them to not give any of her details to him. She just cursed them out on the phone and they admitted it, saying that since Mom and him are still married and we're all one family, they're allowed to provide him with that information. Note, their insurances are completely separate. They never shared a plan. She has all her plans with that insurance company and he only has one insurance policy for his own car with them. My father's father and both my father and his brother abused and molested my aunt. My grandmother covered it up and made everybody believe my aunt was crazy. When she was little, my grandfather would dunk her face into hot soup or break a plate on the back of her head if she didn't finish the meal. Both brothers regularly tasted their father's belt. A tradition my uncle continued, often beating up and locking my cousin in the closet when he was little. Despite them both regularly receiving beatings, they were considered the good children and received way more praise than their fickle egos could handle. My uncle was the most spoiled one, leading to him growing into an overt narcissist who even today thinks he's better than everybody else. After I graduated and got a degree in software engineering, he came by, mocked me and insisted that his 3-month Fokai course in COBOL is way superior. He evades taxes and openly brags that people are too stupid to catch on. Last year the government did catch on when they realized that in 2020 he had accidentally been given not one but multiple COVID recovery grants, despite his business not even being eligible, and fined him in the process. Just like my own father, it doesn't deter him the slightest. New update: the pimp showed up in my neighborhood yesterday and threatened one of my neighbors for telling me about his activity in our area. I foolishly and angrily told my father that the pimp frequents our home while my father is away. Naturally, my father is so deep into this that he immediately sent my voicemail to the pimp. Stay tuned for further updates.